Hello, everybody. Wendy wanders the city with your host, Paul, today. I'm just walking into the client's offices today, and I figured I'd give a chance to bring you all along for the walk. So, today we're on North Avenue right now, and we're going to walk onto Goose Island. Just before we go on to Goose Island, I'm going to take us up to the bridge, and the Chicago River is actually a working river. It's a commercial navigable river, and there are plenty of boats that navigate this river today. Sometimes it's with building materials, gravels, concretes. Sometimes it's grain. Sometimes it's steel. So the river has to stay navigable, and we are at the north end of Goose Island, and there's a bit of a turning basin up here because those ships. This is about the furthest north that it makes sense to be up commercially viable. Now they will go a little bit further. There's the Morton Salt is just north of us. Morton Salt has not operated out of that area in a very long time. So it's not been the Morton Salt factory, and they are just now converting it into an entertainment area. So you can see an awful lot of ships moving up there to bring in construction material and to remove construction material. We're headed up the North Avenue Bridge, and this area is called the Turning Basin, and it allows these large commercial ships to naturally turn. Right? In the tugboat world, well, in almost all boating, it's much easier to control a ship that's going forward than it is going backwards. Oh, not sure if you'll see it, but there's a blue heron coming across the lake at the lowest level, right? So he's just skimming across the top there. He's in front of the Mars Wrigley building now, and he'll probably go up to the trees here. Yeah, so he's done a U-turn. Now the heron's a fishing bird, but it doesn't really swim. It wades, so it has very long, narrow legs, and it will find shallow areas. So it'll perch on trees, or it will find branches, rocks, shallow areas where it can hunt for fish. But we're in the turning basin here. And what you don't see right now, but you'll see it when I go ahead and cross onto the island. There's an island in front of me, and there are two navigable locations. So right behind these trees is one arm of the branch. Howdy, James. And the other this is the other arm of the North Branch of the Chicago River. Mars has an awful lot, and by the way, Mars purchased Wrigley, so it's Mars, M&M, Wrigley, all are the same company these days. And we'll see several buildings that are Mars related as we wander the island. James, one of the things that I think is really cool there is, and this again is a navigable river, the number of navigable rivers in England, and I guess I'm counting canals the same, and those canals are very often man-made. But the idea, like you can get from London to Bath by way of water. So in the early days, right, we didn't have motorized vehicles. Horses didn't really want to be going up and over hills. So we would dig ditches because it was very easy to put a large volume of freight on a boat, and it was commercially viable to move a boat. The walkway that we're going to go across is an old rail track and bridge. So this bridge is movable, just like most of the bridges in Chicago, because the waterway has the right-of-way. There's a little sign here kind of telling us the history of this, the bridge. It's called, right, the Cherry Avenue Bridge. We're getting some information on it, right? Bobtail swing, which is different. So a swing bridge, this one doesn't lift up and down, it rotates right and left. And as we look underneath here, you can see that it's sitting on a, well, I don't know if the camera is showing you that, but it's sitting on a round piling there. And then there are little wheels around there, so it can turn, rotate around. And then it talks that there was some bridge rehabilitation recently. As we go down it, the tracks are still here, but it's just been made part of the walking track. So we'll cross this bridge. You know, as I had mentioned, the river goes around the island on both sides. Here we're seeing a small boathouse. There's much more commercial viability on this side of the river today, and it's retail. So there's an REI down here, there's a Whole Foods down here, Old Navy. So you're seeing, it's Kingsbury Street, and you're seeing an awful lot of retail on this side. The river itself is very quiet. Sorry, somebody just came onto the bridge, so I want to give them a little bit of a space before we head back down onto the island. You're seeing then Trump Tower there off in the distance. This is no longer in operation, but there used to be a water taxi that would have come all the way up here. You're seeing the black awning there. I'll give you a better shot of it. And then this would have been the legacy infrastructure that allowed people to walk up and down so that they could board the boat. This is the same company that would have been the boat that you can get at the railroad station or underneath the Wrigley Tower. And as I mentioned, it's just no longer in use. And then you're seeing us look through the water taxi stop towards the North Avenue Bridge. We'll head south onto the island, getting, again, more of the skyline here. You've got the Sears Tower as the large building on the right. In between these two close retail buildings is Bloomingdale's and John Hancock Tower. Then you're seeing some of the residentials that are in Lakeshore East, followed by the Trump Tower as we move from left to right. Good morning, Nancy. Howdy, Lady E. So today we are on, we're going to take the Goose Island, a tour of Goose Island. By the way, you probably know there's a beer brewed here, Goose Island Brewery. And this is where it gets its name from. Goose Island has been purchased by Anheuser-Busch, and I think that Anheuser-Busch might be part of South Africa Brewing now, SAB. There's been a huge consolidation in there. I think the only thing that really exists anymore is Heineken's, South Africa Brewing, and Miller Coors. But the Mars owns, terrible word. As we look down here, you can see that Mars has the fence there, and they have a gated area that only a Mars employee can be close to the river on the inside there. Yeah, Wrigley has a long name, long time name association with the city of Chicago. Wrigley was the candy maker and the gum maker. When I was a child, there was really only the three gums there, right? You had I don't even remember what the white one was. You had the blue, the green one, which was double mint, and the yellow one, which was juicy fruit, I think. This weekend, I was up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm mentioning this just as a reminder that Nancy kind of triggered this. They have a really nice military museum there, right on the town square. And it's funny, I keep on saying Madison has a town square. It's a city square, so I would have to say that Madison is a city. But they have a map of the the D-Day invasion of France to try to remove the invading Nazis from their control of the French land. Is the white one spearmint? Thank you, James. The other, I'll say, when I was a kid, there were 3 candy bars and 3 kinds of gum that you could get: Snickers, 3 Musketeers, or the Milky Way. That's not true. And then the Hershey chocolate bar, which was the flat bar with the 12 or 16 little segments in it. As we look over here, this really is manufacturing down this side, so it's a little bit less interesting. We'll walk one street in, and we'll see much more of the kind of the office space in this area. If you take the commuter rail station west out of Union Station, one of the first train stops as you leave the city proper is actually called the Mars train stop, and it's because their manufacturing plant used to be out there. I'm not sure. I think that they have an awful lot of presence in Atlanta these days. They still have presence up here in Chicago. It's just not as, I think it's more the executives that are up here, and they don't produce as much up here. The island is rather small, so right, we got on the island at North Avenue, and that's 1600 North, and we're going to kind of get off the island at Division. Now at Division, that's 1200 North, so 4 blocks, and if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that's approximately a half mile. There are a lot at the southern end of this. There's an awful lot of restaurant supply companies. Here we see a company, SNA. Looks like they're a lighting company. And it looks like it's more like it's commercial lighting for movies or for sets. A few sparrows here in the small trees that we've got going on. Oh, James, you can't be leading me astray like that. I will tell you that I would have said it was the white gum, the green gum, and the yellow gum. This, I don't know if it'll come through because of the camera, but you've got this divided light here, and then inside you've got lights hanging over some structure, and then very high up you've also got divided light. By the way, that's the way that most of these factories were really heated, and not heated, cooled, for lack of a better term. That you would, with the heat rising and stacking up in the top, those would have been vented in the days that this would have been a working manufacturing site. So that would have been the escape valve for the heat to leave the factory. Today, what I also want to do is, we've talked about this in the past. Chicago always had these projects for lower income families, and it was meant to be, right, lower income housing. When they would put aside this land, they usually became very tall apartment complexes, and there's a long history of challenges and violence in those spaces. The gangs, it was a breeding ground for gang members, and so on and so forth, right? And we would have had, excuse me, just spilled some coffee. We would have had the Latin Kings here. We would have had Bloods and Crips, MS-13, I think. I apologize for not knowing all of my gangs, but it would have been tough. And people definitely had their lives shortened living in those spaces. This is Eastman Street. Now, Eastman from Kodak Eastman is an East Coast company, so I'm not sure if there's any kind of relationship with that. But the honorific sign below it talked about Honorary Studio Way, which might have been some form of homage to that. Yes, happy Pride Day. I'm glad that in the States, we've gotten to the point where we have Pride Month. You know, I've said it before. I don't like Father's Day and Mother's Day. You know, we should always be honoring our parents, but I understand why we do it, and that's fine. You're allowed to stand for people that are not straight any time of the year. And I don't mean to say straight something, but I always forget all of the letters, and I feel that some people might get offended when I leave out some of those. But LGBTQ plus, I think, is where we're at most of the time these days. You can see that, right, we've kind of walked over to the western edge. So this is the western channel of the bridge. As we go across Division Street, there are two bridges, right, because the river now is both to the east and to the west of us as we're on an island. And just south of here is really where the island kind of, or the two branches converge, and the southern tip of the island is there. But as I was saying, in regards to these projects, we talked about a project called Cabrini Green. Now, Cabrini Green was an interesting project because of how close it was to the central business district. So when we think about the Taylor homes and some of those other homes, they're far south, right? They're 30 blocks south, they're 50 blocks south, they're 80 blocks south. So they're outside of the central business district. Whereas Cabrini Green was basically Orleans, Clybourne division in that area. And that puts them just barely outside of the city, and they would have been, the Brown Line would have been something that could service that area. If you're following the channel, we had a nice tour of the Brown Line, the upper stops. I'm going to say last week, here we got the skyline again. Folks, I keep on making the mistake of tilting my hand and pouring coffee all over my wrist. Here again, we've got some art. We've got the sun behind the building, so this might be pretty dark, but still like taking in the murals. Cabrini Green was one of those places where when we finally decided that projects weren't the right way to help disadvantaged economically people live, we started trying to gentrify those spaces, you know, make it too expensive for anybody who didn't have money to live in. And Jane Byrne, the city's first female mayor, she actually, whether it was a PR stunt or an action, activist action, as the mayor, she moved into Cabrini Green to show how safe it was. Now, I will say that when you're the mayor of the third largest city in the world, you have a police detail and you're surrounded by SUV vehicles at all hours of the day. So to equate the idea that Jane Byrne, the mayor of the city, felt safe in Cabrini Green, so therefore everybody else should, might be disingenuous. But I'm going to say that it's a move in the right direction. And as we walk towards the city center, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you down a street, which it's very likely that there will be a police officer parked at both ends of this street. And it still is probably technically considered a project. There are low-income families that live there. Those low-income families have been promised by the developers that in the new development space, they will be given affordable housing. Now, I think the way that the agreement was authored, I'm talking loud because every dump truck in the world is coming down here. There's a waste management facility right here. So I'm trying to talk over the trucks that are coming down. Sorry. The people's agreement with the developer was that you had to build our new house and get us in there before we would leave this house. And it makes perfectly good sense because historically, there have been plenty of times where promises have been made that if you leave this house and let us knock it down, we'll build you another one. And then all of a sudden, that second part of the promise is never fulfilled. I understand why people would take a harder stance on that. So we will go down that street, and it will look, it's the low rises that are still remaining, and I think they're only 3 stories tall, but you'll tell that they were project type housing, very square, non-artistic, just rectangular buildings to stuff people into, who the city historically wanted to ignore. And I'm not going to say that everybody wants to ignore it. It's a hasty generalization, but I don't feel uncomfortable making a statement that, what is it? We talk about the 99% invisible. Here we're walking again across the eastern branch of the Chicago River as it goes around the island. And that's Halsted Avenue right there, or Halsted Street right there. Just behind Halsted Street, and one day, I think I might have called it the river tour, we did walk north from, and if you hug the river, there are very, very expensive condos right there. And developers have come through, and they've turned the Montgomery Ward's building into residential upscale living, with gyms, restaurants, bars. And then a block and a half over, you've got the remnants of the projects of Cabrini Green. Hopefully you all enjoyed our little visit through Madison on Saturday. Afterwards, and I wish I would have had my equipment with me, we went through the University of Wisconsin. And the University of Wisconsin has an area on their campus called the Memorial Union Hall. And it looks like an old, again, Wisconsin and Madison are very dramatic in their history. It's got beautiful archways and drawings and murals inside, steins everywhere. When we were there, it was very warm, so a lot of people were out on the patio, but then a lot of people were indoors watching a soccer game or football, for those of you that call it such. And it was just this massive indoor building that it felt like you could have walked for miles inside of. This is a very new gas station. The city of Chicago proper has relatively few gas stations, only because the licensing is really hard to do. And I think that the people that had gas station properties we're very good about lobbying against others. And then you've got the environmental side of it that says we don't want that in the ground near us. So as we walk further down, we've got the Target ahead of us. The way that this Target works is the ground floor is parking, and then the top floor is actually the shopping. Got some fire trucks coming by. Thank you, Nance. As soon as I finished my coffee, I did make banners. Fuzzy was helpful in reminding me that, by the way, we don't have anything to show your banners. Let's see if I can pull one up real quick. So we've got the link tree. I shared WWTC with one of my other channels. So Wendy Wanders the City and Wendy Watches the Cops happens to both be WWTC. I don't do as much over there. I'm very opportunistic. So if something does occur, I will go and audit a police action. And again, it's mostly an activist mechanism where I want to protect the people who the police might be overstepping their bounds in regards to their laws, to the laws and their rights. But then you've got Wendy Wanders the City as well. And I share the funds across these two channels. So I appreciate that. And let me get back to comments. Sorry. The funds there are really to upgrade the equipment. And something I want to do is I want to get better software so that I can actually edit these videos. I have so much footage now, but it's a bit of a challenge with the software that I use. The software that I use is mostly meant for screen sharing. And this just doesn't really fit into that model of editing very well. So definitely want to figure out a way that I can use a different set of software for that. And yeah, there's some monies involved in that. So again, not expected, always helpful. We've got a power transformer station to the right. So looks like a little bit of a prison, but it's really just, you can see the transformer up on top. Right, and the city comes over the power comes around the city, right, on the high voltage lines, and then comes down and is reduced to residential voltages and amperages. This, I just think it's cute to see how not symmetric. They built the same house over and over and over again. So whoever that developer was, right, that everything's 3 stories, all the back patios look the same. They might be condos, they might be apartments, not sure. Then you've got this beautiful tree-lined park here with some more residences just behind it. Nancy, I believe that your math might be off on that, but happy birthday, Canada. Congratulations. I'm sorry that you were as much French as you were English at one point in time. And for all of you French people on the channel, I'm just kidding. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if we walk down this street, we're going to see some rather upscale condos in that area. So everything to our right will be rather gentrified, and the developers have come through and made the changes desired to make this a high-income neighborhood. This Thursday is a day that I get to be prideful of America. And no offense, James, but we won. I'm glad we became friends afterwards. Isn't that nice when enemies can finally become friends again? Let me see if you can actually see much in here. So this, again, the River Village, North Townhomes. There is some green space in there, beautiful. And then you've got the river, and there are docks. It's not really a marina, but you can rent dock space there. And there is power. Usually you're going to see, 35 to 50-foot boats in there. Now we're coming down to Oak Street. If we were in the Gold Coast, remember Oak Street is kind of the top of the Magnificent Mile. And it's the one, Oak Street is 1,000. And with Oak Street, you've also got the bend in the Lakeshore Drive as well. So the Oak Street Beach is right there. This, again, is the old Montgomery Wards turned into residential. Morning. Young ladies practicing their flag work. Is Two-Spirit non-binary? And please, I hope everybody understands. I'm asking this out of curiosity. I'm not asking this in any derogatory way. Just realized I came down a street a little quicker than I should have. I need to go back up about a half block so that we can go into the project area. Here you're seeing the back of one of the projects. So the I would almost explain that it looks like a courtyard back here, right? So you've got the yellow bush behind this yellow brick building behind this treed-in area. And then there's a little interior courtyard. These look like what I would have said, like the old motel experience here in the States. If you were driving down a 2-lane road and you needed to go and sleep for the night, the hotels were oftentimes U-shaped, and the U was the parking space. And then around it was the hotel, usually all exterior entrance, versus today. All right, I think that's why they call it motel is motor hotel. And you had an external entrance, so the builder and the owner didn't have to worry about any additional internal costs or wasted space. Sorry, I'm stopping to read this. Thank you for that, Nance. I was watching another channel, and I remember I do some activism on another space that I really don't like to talk about here, but somebody was talking, one of the people that was a victim of that space, and they also happened to be part of the LGBT community, was kind of talking about, as she's in this, what she's going through. And the only thing I could think about the whole time that, right, as a straight white male, I never had to defend my position. I never had to defend my feelings. I never had to defend my thoughts. And the idea that while I would say they're more equal today, they still fight on a constant basis. And I know that they might be a triggering term. People who are not, who were part of a historical group that weren't easily expected. That we think that everything is equal today, and it still isn't, right? It's better, but it's not equal. All right, so now we're into the actual projects. You're seeing, right, the very generic elements. Now on this side, you can see that it's all fenced off, and that's because the final leases have been removed on that side of the street, so they can start moving forward with that. But on this side, many of these homes are occupied still. This would be private security. Morning, ladies. And again, right, little courtyard in here, very small homes right there. The actual apartments are narrow. You've got another kind of vantage point down the street here. This would have been several blocks in this direction, and you're starting to see that. If I was to think about this, this almost looks like military barracks, right? The idea that we just line up houses to warehouse people. You know, you might be able to see right here, but from the backside, right, I said there was that courtyard. The way that this works is there's the set of perpendicular buildings to the street and then the set of parallel buildings. And in this situation, right, the gap in the streets of the buildings parallel give you the courtyard, but then behind the street of the building that's parallel, there's also a courtyard behind that. So the buildings kind of zigzag back and forth to create some green space inside the apartment complexes. Now, when we come down to the end of this street, this is a one-way street, by the way, but this was another street that I really love running in the morning. It's introspection, right? On the idea that I live okay, right? I don't have a lot of the problems economically that some of the people that live in this community do. And the idea that we live so close to one another, right? We actually do have shared community. Here, I'm guessing that this is open so that construction can go in there. But again, there are still no people living in any of these 4 blocks. All of the people live on this side over here. So Nancy, to your question, just the neighborhood in general, actually the city in general. A little bit, yeah. So, yeah, we're on YouTube. I just show people kind of this, all parts of the city. Windy wanders the city. The city. Yeah, wanders the city. Yep. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. It definitely would be considered a black neighborhood. So most of the projects were that. Now there are some projects that were Latin, but they were later in this in the urban development or the urban sprawl of Chicago. Now, so let's kind of look. I'm going to give you a span. We're looking westward from here. So we're in a tough neighborhood, right, or an area that's economically deprived. You can see the building behind here with the umbrellas on the roof. That's 1 block over, right? So these these cities are connected, or these neighborhoods are connected. Now, people do put up walls. People, historically, everybody likes to put up walls and boundaries and separate we's and they's and us and them's. But it's that close. You could walk next door, right? And you could be in the projects. Here we do see police. How you doing, guys? So I think it's a bad image. And again, I'm sure that the police have a reason for being here. I think it's a bad image for the police to be camped out in this neighborhood. I think it draws unnecessary and either intentional or unintentional bad symbology to the neighborhood. Hey, Joe Cool, how you doing? We just walked through the remnants of Cabrini Green. And I'm still listening to the radio. It's just hard to find things. Folks, if you're not already subscribed, I would definitely consider going over and subscribing to Joe Cool. Unique perspective on police auditing and police watching, right? There are times where he's going to find the police overstepping their bounds themselves, and other times where he'll put commentary on videos of others who have been improperly treated by the police. This next neighborhood, I'm going to say, is always a confusing neighborhood to name. So it's Kingsbury is the street to our right that will be a boundary, and then you've got the elevated street, the elevated trains to our left or to the east. These are all residential buildings these days. The overall sense would be that these are well-heeled people that live in this neighborhood. You've got the East Bank Club, which is a very high-end, high-scale athletic club. You go in there and you have your prime rib steak, and then you go do your workout. I don't know if they call it West North Loop or Northwest Loop. A lot of greenery here. Hey, Joe, if you're still in town, I will definitely try to text you later on, see if you can take me on another tour. A lot of masonry in this building, right, in this area. So these would have been warehouses at one point in time that have been turned into residential condos, residential apartments. As we continue down, the southern boundary of this is going to be Kinsey Street. And then it will kind of dead end into the Merchandise Mart and Wolf Point. Wolf Point is where the Chicago River separates. And so as it moves east, you're going to go to the lake. And then the river itself has its north and south branches, which separate right there, mostly as a T intersection. Wolf Point is all new residential building, very tall buildings. I'm comfortable and confident that it's mostly reclaimed land. Something that's amazing about that area of town is that used to be the slaughterhouse district. So the pigs and cattle would have been right there along the river. Eventually, people that are well-heeled didn't like the idea that was happening. So that all moved south to 39th Street. And we've got a new area down there. Sorry, I don't want to keep on following. No matter where I go, it's mothers and children. um, we're going to again come into some green space here. This is truly where the southern end of Goose Island stops and the two rivers come back together here at Erie Street. If we were to walk down this street and look into the river, we would be able to see the Greyhound maintenance station there and the backside of the Tribune building. This was where the Tribune was actually printed at, over here. The executives of the Tribune building, naturally, were on Michigan Avenue. Let me get across the street here. I got a landscaper with a leaf blower. This neighborhood's very, very quiet. So between Chicago and Kinsey, it's just a really quiet neighborhood. As you can see ahead of me, we're going to head underneath the highway. Folks, this wall is always a joy for me to want to walk by, but then there's the side that says, why do we need these sayings, right? Why does humanity suck so much that we didn't understand this already? But you've got the injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, Martin Luther King Jr. I would like to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free so other people would be also free, Rosa Parks. To sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men. To me, that's if you can't stand for it, you're against it. But Abraham Lincoln, right? And then we all live here. This is still from the COVID era, right? The thank you, essential workers. One thing that I will tell you about cop watching, and it's, again, I have very limited experience. There's a lot of wait and watch. That it takes an awful lot of hours of being available before you actually catch something. Now, when you catch something, it's usually horrific. And I'm not going to, it's not that people are becoming unalive at the hands of police, which, by the way, they do. But to see the violation of rights and the power that police must impose or feel empowered to impose upon community members is, it's very sad, and that is horrific, right? It's dehumanizing. I'm going to bump up my pace a little bit, see if we can get across the street here real quick. If you walk down the stairs right here, you can basically travel from here all the way to the loop on the river. We're out of coffee, folks. So it's just you and me here now. I'm going to walk over into the shade. Got another officer walking by, or driving by, sorry. As I had mentioned earlier, and I was a block early. The next street is Kinsey, and to our right, this building right here is that East Bank Club, which I spoke about. And you've got the tall buildings, right? The Holiday Inn and the other two residential buildings here at Wolf Point. And just to its left, in order for us to get back into the city, I'm going to have to walk next to the Merchandise Mart. The Merchandise Mart, again, was part of the Kennedy dynasty. That was their last crown jewel. It sold in the last 10 years. But up until that point, the Kennedys, the family or the estate of the Kennedys still owned the Merchandise Mart. And it was touted as the largest retail space in the world. It's a very, very large building. Now it is mostly on the lower floors, design houses. So whether that be the porcelains and the bathroom fixtures or the kitchen appliances, flooring, carpeting, paneling, all of those elements. Instead of going all the way down to Kinsey, I'm going to walk down this street, and you'll see a little bit more resident or a little bit more retail here. So again, you've got East Bank Club. That is a gym that is too expensive for my blood. Now, as a runner, the streets are free, so I do appreciate that. This is the Hampton Social. Nice seafood stuff inside of here, but I like the old-timiness of the tobacconist and expert tobacco. And by the way, I don't like tobacco. I guess I like the mystery and the history of tobacco, as between tobacco, cotton, and sugar. Those were the commodities that helped America gain its independence, or funded America in gaining its independence. If we look further up, we've got the Brown Line coming down. So this is the Brown Line is just about to enter the loop once it crosses the river. We're now on Orleans Street. Here you're seeing just the edge of the Merchandise Mart, the concrete structure on our left. This also is part of where Chicago is going to be built on top of itself. So the street below us, and in this situation it's a street, and then on the next one it's the river. But also in certain situations there'll be rail that goes underneath these streets, because these would have been originally some manufacturing buildings out here, and they would have needed the train transportation in order to move their goods out of the factories. Looking west down Kinsey, and then east down Kinsey, and you can just see the enormity of the Merchandise Mart here. We've seen that from the other side, right on the river, several times. Another one that's interesting, if you walk across this bridge, you can come on to this side. There is a university inside of this building, as well as design houses and retail office space. You can see we're about to come up to the river. Walking underneath the pedestrian bridge that connects Merchandise Mart with this building next door. I'll go ahead and cross here first, and then we'll cross over. We've got the bridge, the sidewalk's closed on this side. I'll take you up the stairs here. Kind of, there's a bunch of statuary that's an homage to the retail kingpins of days gone by. Again, Merchandise Mart being the largest retail space in the world, at least at some points in its life. And Chicago being home to Sears Roebuck, JCPenney's, Montgomery Ward's, Marshall Field's, who was recently taken over by Macy's. And I guess it's not recently, that's 10, 12 years ago at this point. I'm going to walk to the far end so that I don't put the camera into the sun. You can see the river walk below us. Got a tour boat going underneath. See the mart, or the Merchandise Mart. Very grand entrance here. If you go in here, to the left is almost auditorium type seating. There's a little restaurant bar at the top of that auditorium. All right. Now, I don't think that any of the statuary matters too much, right? But I'll give you a shot of all the faces as we look down the row of retailers. But you've got General Robert E. Wood, 1879, 1969. Julius Rosewald. I will tell you that I didn't do enough research to tell you which stores these would have been, but now I'm going to recognize a few, right? Frank Winfield Woolworth, 1852 to 1919. Marshall Field, 1834 to 1906. Give the woman what she wants. John Wanamaker. Now, I know him through running as well, because he would have been a retail magnate. Yeah, I hear you, James. He would have been a retail magnate in New York, and New York has a track and field race, and one of the sponsors of the mile race was always the Wanamaker store, so it's called the Wanamaker Mile. I never ran in that. I was never that fast. George Huntington Hartford. Edward Filene. Now, I remember this more as an East Coast store. In Boston, I would see Filene's and Filene's Basement. I think we see Filene's Basement here in Chicago, but I don't know that I've ever seen a Filene's store. And finally, Aaron Montgomery Ward, 1844 to 1913. And just, again, a reminder on Montgomery Ward. He was the one that did the fundraising so that the land could be set aside to create Grant Park. So he was fundraising with all of his wealthy friends to make sure that they could buy the land to give Chicago its front yard. And now we'll head into the city. Good morning, Eric. How are you? So today we've covered Goose Island. Goose Island has a lot of buildings that are related to Mars Wrigley, the candy and gum company. And then we came through Cabrini Green, which is one of the last real projects still operating in Illinois. And projects are places where poor, low-cost housing is a very euphemistic way of saying it, but it was the socioeconomically deprived people who would live in the projects. We've passed by the Um, Merchandise Mart, the world's largest retail space. And now we're to Wacker Drive. You know, I don't show you guys the cavernous cities that much, or the streets here. So this is looking due south, but look at all of the buildings, and it just, we call them the canyons, right? And one of the ways that the city of Chicago gets its name, the Windy City, is because these buildings collect the wind and redistribute it. Now, I will tell you that the true reason is because of politics, and it's all the blowhards of the politics telling their stories, and that's really where the name Windy City comes from. But it physically is a very windy city on days when it feels calm, only because those buildings catch and manipulate the wind. And here we are coming through, this is the junction of the north and south branch of the Chicago River. The massive buildings, right? I talked about Wolf Point. Those massive buildings are sitting on top of reclaimed land. Now the foundations go down to bedrock, but the park space and everything, that would have been very swampy. Like that corner was very swampy, and the north side of the river was the original stockyards in Chicago. Here we can see a green line coming in and a pink line going out. So the pink line is going to travel for about a mile, and then it's going to take a left-hand turn and go south into some of the southeast the southwest communities of Chicago. The green line goes straight west all the way up to Harlem Avenue, or Oak Park is the town out there. Got a fire truck coming this way, and if he gets closer, I'll go ahead and mute the mic for a bit. Somebody down here enjoying a run on the lakefront. By no means a silly question. It is precisely how they are labeled. So when those two trains would have come by, you couldn't see it, but not only did they have, there's little, they look almost like ship portholes, but it will have both the color, so the actual name will be printed in white on the colored background. So if it's the green line, it's a green background, the pink line, the pink background. And it will say pink or green. Now there's one slight difference, that the green line, it goes east and west right here, and then after it leaves the loop going south, it goes north and south. But it splits at about 47th Street. It splits, and some of the trains will go to 63rd and Cottage Grove, and others will go to 63rd and Ashland. So they'll be green printed with either Cottage Grove or Ashland on them. And then the trains are, I'll give them to you. So the above grounds, or the primarily above ground trains, are the orange line, and that services Midway and then comes into the loop, goes around the loop, and then back out to Midway. There's about 8 stops between here and Midway. Midway being the smaller airport here in Chicago. The other trains that take advantage of this elevated pathway right here are the pink line, which we just saw. And the pink line, again, it's going to do a loop, and they look like a lollipop. They'll do a loop, and then when they go out to the west here, like I said, a little bit further down, they're going to head south and service Pilsen and those neighborhoods down there. The brown line, it again is going to do a lollipop, and it's going to go around the tracks right here, and then it will head northwest. And we saw a little bit of the last 4 stops on that last week. What else do we have there? Orange. Okay. The 2 subterranean lines are the blue line and the red line. And they're subterranean through the city. So the blue line travels underneath Dearborn Street, the red line travels underneath State Street. But once they clear the central business district, they do pop up back above the highway. And then the red line will follow the Dan Ryan, which is we have names for our expressways as well as numbers, but the Dan Ryan goes south, and the red line will follow the southern rail there, or follow the southern expressway. And then the blue line will go northwest, and it follows the Kennedy all the way out to the O'Hare Airport. The red and blue lines run 24 hours. The red and blue lines are the longest train lines. They also then, because of that, and if you've got people that are unhoused, they want to take that train from O'Hare all the way to the end, get back on and turn around because they get that warmth. So those are the ones that you can get on and be uninterrupted for the longest period of time. And you'll oftentimes see people sleeping on that just because the spot in life where they are. Looking north down the North Branch, there's a train going behind me. I'd love it. This is definitely a chance. I don't want to do the professional. There are people whose job it is to do walking tours, and I enjoy the heck out of that. I will tell you that I like the places that other people don't go, right? So there are the popular places and the must-have tourist places, and then there's those other places that really make the city what it is. Like, here's one of those spaces coming up next is in the next block. Most people will stay up here in this plaza. So this plaza goes all the way down to Union Station. Except right now there's some construction that disallows that. I'm the kind of guy that, do you see the eating area that's on the river down there at Beatnik? By the way, Beatnik's a cool place too. It's got offbeat, obscure music that goes through there, as the name might imply. But that's the place I want to eat, not at the big steakhouse where I'm paying 10 times what I should. But this area right here, again, there's a little park down here, and nobody really knows that this park exists. It's accessible at this end of the parkway, or at this end of the plaza here. There are, we call them dive bars, right? There are several places in Chicago where they only accept cash at the bar. And you oftentimes will see second and third shifters there. So the idea that there are bars here that open at 6 a.m. and they open at 6 a.m. for a reason, right? It's not as common anymore, but most of these places ran 24/7. And when you were in the manufacturing world, right, you got off at 6 o'clock in the morning. And just like people who work 9 to 5, when they get off, they might want to have a drink to go relax, calm down, tell stories with their friends. The same is true of anybody working a third shift, right? They've just gotten off of work and they want to kind of calm down before they head home and go to bed. Calm down is, let's see here. Yeah, blow off steam, I guess would be the right way of saying it. Again, here is a set of stairs that is not well traveled. But this set of stairs will take you down to the park underneath this patio. And if you're up here and not paying attention, you might think that the river ends right here, but it does not, right? So you've got the landing downstairs. This area is not necessarily new, but it's the high rent district, and they do have they have maintenance all the time. There are people who are employed by these buildings who are just like you see the person ahead of me, right? Making sure that everything remains clean out here. They historically have not had encampments, but I will tell you that since COVID, there has been a slight shift. There are places where the homeless know to go, and we have charitable organizations which help house these people. Now, some of them have stipulations like you've got to test for drugs and you can't be drinking. They come with strings attached. Sorry, got a jackhammer next to me. The big parks. So Chicago has these massive green space parks. Grant Park, there is no way in the world that anybody would ever let somebody put a tent up in Grant Park. It's too important to tourism. The mayor wouldn't allow, civics wouldn't allow for it, right? But you've got the parks like Humboldt Park, where that community isn't quite as well to do, and there are tents in that neighborhood. Sorry, there are tents in that park. That used to only be during the winter they would allow them, but right now, I think I was there 2 weeks ago. I was in Humboldt Park, and the tents are still there. For the most part, the unhoused are incredibly respectful. They might panhandle, but they're not persistent in their panhandling, and they typically don't panhandle where they sleep. So that's kind of an unwritten rule that they have. The other thing that's interesting, it's interesting to me that we have plenty of these tunnels, right? So you've got streets that go over streets, and then there'll be a tunnel or a viaduct underneath it. That's another place where you'll see people put tents up. And with those tents, what'll happen is there's kind of a den mother that'll be in that area, and it's going to be an unhoused person, and they typically will be the ones cleaning, right? So that they're sweeping, and they'll set rules that in order to be in here, you can't cause trouble, you can't do this, you can't do that, just so that the police won't come, so that the civilians or citizens and the police won't come and harass them, right? Because they'll be respectful. And so long as they're respectful, keep the area clean, they're not exposing themselves to people, they're not using the restroom in public, then it becomes this safe space, and it almost becomes a very controlled environment in that area. We've done this before. So this is Union Station. If you look over here, you've got the building, the glass building with the curved elements going up, right? It's the Accenture building. So Accenture is the named tenant on that. But again, all that means is that they spent an awful lot of money to put a name on it. They probably have less than 10% of the offices in that building. But that's called Ogilvy Transportation Center. So that is one of the train stations. And then I'll walk up a little bit. You can see the pedestrian pathway that goes over the street here. And that would allow you to walk into this building, and then you come all the way down, and you would have walked out of this corner, and you can walk into this building, which is Union Station. Now, I'm going to walk through here. It's going to get loud. I know it gets really loud for me. I don't know if you guys hear it on the mic as badly as I do. But this is the train platforms for Union Station. And Union Station has trains that leave both north and south. I'm going to mute you for a second. Okay, I can still hear it pretty loud. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but there is one train behind me, and then you've got an Amtrak right here. Now, Amtrak is the national train track. Another Amtrak right here. These are Metro over here, so these are regional. These are going to go to the suburbs of Chicago. We're past the engine, so it might be a little bit more reasonable now. You'll notice that these trains, so again, Metra is the regional train, and they have a network or a commuter system called the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority. And then you've got the CTA, which is the Chicago Transportation Authority. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that this much signal doesn't move up and down very well. So we are underground. "100%. And one of the things, I'm gonna wait until I kind of get into the building, but the way that Union Station works is that the farthest that way, so track 19 and 21, they go all the way through the building, so you can have a train come in from the south and leave through the north. But it's very rare. For the most part, you're going to deboard or unboard and reboard the train. You can see track 19 over there, and I think I've walked out there before. I'll walk out again over there. Track number 15. Oh, sorry. It's 21 and 23, not 19 and 21. So here you can see the tracks pass all the way through and under the building, right? The river is just the other side of this fence right now. These last few tracks are either Amtrak's or Metra. Or Amtrak's. So they're going to go national. All the other tracks are Metra. All the odd tracks go out the north side. All the even tracks go out the south side. Here we've got a porter. They're going to help people with their luggage. We're going to head up into the Grand Hall. The Grand Hall is beautiful in here. If you ever come to Chicago, you definitely want to see it. It's a very old building. The A lot of marble in there or granite. You'll see um, the building is so old and it's been used so much that the stairs have dents in them from human curved and in the nicest way. And again, I'm still slightly underground, so I'm not sure if you're picking up very well. Come in here and do the. I wonder what it would be like, because let me see if I can get to a map. So they've covered up. Oh no, there. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that, but there is the rail system. I think with the screening, you can't see too much there. But on the way that we came in, these are all the trains that are going to go to Milwaukee and then to Minneapolis and then out to Seattle, through Montana. As we go out the south side, those are the trains that are going to the East Coast and south. And so you'll be able to go to Atlanta, DC, New York off of those trains. And here, again, we see the Great Hall. I've tried to show you on this camera before, but I don't think it shows up very well. That the curvature of the stairs as we head up. Now, if you walk out these doors, you're still a little bit subterranean. We're going to go up these stairs. This is the one. So you can see a bit of a chip in this step as well, where my finger's at. But this also right here, you can see that it drops 1/4 of an inch at least as it runs across that little area there. Maybe this one shows up pretty well too, where you can see the kind of the divot, but it's not necessarily a divot. It's just that you put 1 billion people over a stairwell, and eventually even the stone is going to fade or relent. Here we can see the Great Hall from the second floor here. Howdy. And being a transportation hub, you can also get to this next spot from underground. But we're going to go across the street. This is where the train station hooks up with the bus system here in Chicago. So you've gotten off the train, you need to get to the next neighborhood. You'll use the buses right here. And there are a couple of islands in there, probably 5 routes that buses can come out, 5 different channels that buses can come out. But it'll be dozens of buses that are serviced through here. There's an aroma going on right here. I have a terrible sense of smell, and when I can smell something, it's a terrible it's a terrible aroma. Not sure why that taxi's not coming, but we'll walk up to the river, and then I will close it here before I head in and go chat with my clients. You may have seen this before, but if I go down to the Union Station, these right here, they're basically sunlights. There's 2 things that are happening here. One is that these allow light to go onto those tracks where people are trying to board, right? So it lights the way down there. You don't have to pay for electricity. You just pay for the lighting. The other one, and it's hard to see because this concrete fence is kind of blocking it, but there's a little dome on the very top. So it's a large dome, but it's 2 there's a very narrow dome at the very top, and that narrow dome at the top, that keeps rain from falling into an open slot. So all of those trains downstairs are running on diesel, and they're emitting exhaust while they're standing in the station. This allows that exhaust to come out and vent northbound, or up into the sky here. So that's what those other elements are. Something else I'll encourage you to look at is that is the old post office. It's now an office building. And a couple of weeks ago, one of the people from Uber let me in, and there's a garden up there on the rooftop. And that garden is something we took a tour of recently. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and look at that. And we will head up to the river, and I will bid you adieu for the day. Natalie, thanks for coming in. Eric, thanks for being here. Nancy, thank you always. You and Fuzzy are my excellent mods and my PR team. I really appreciate that you help me out as much as you do. And you get nothing but thanks in return. We've talked about this building before, but the gray part in the middle of that building is basically a map of the Chicago River right here. And as I go up, you'll see there's a little red spot, and that red spot is this actual building on the map of the Chicago River. And now we're looking south down the Chicago River. Yeah, that's awesome. I have a video of the inside as well. I've been so busy and or lazy that I haven't gotten it together yet. So, folks, if you stayed through to the end, I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe. If you're on the replay crew, add comments. Let YouTube know that this is fun to watch. I will definitely be back soon. I will be on the other channel at lunchtime today. And maybe we'll do a walk home this evening. So until then, thank you all so much for being here, and have a great day.